My name is David, and I'm 45 years old. I've been a truck driver for nearly 2 decades based out of Boston. When people hear about my job, they often ask, "What's the creepiest thing you've ever experienced on the road?" For the longest time, I'd shrug and say, "Nothing too crazy." But there's one night I'll never forget, one that still gives me chills just thinking about it. It was a Wednesday night, deep into autumn, the kind where the darkness feels almost tangible and the cold seeps into your bones. I was hauling a load of electronics from Boston to a small town in Pennsylvania. The route was familiar, but something about that night felt off from the beginning. I had been driving for hours, the road stretching endlessly before me, illuminated only by my headlights. I checked the clock, 2:30 a.m. The road was deserted, just as I liked it, but there was an eerie stillness in the air. Have you ever felt like you're being watched even when you're alone? That's how I felt. To keep myself awake, I turned on the radio, but all I got was static. Frustrated, I turned it off and settled for the hum of the engine and the rhythm of the tires on the asphalt. That's when I saw it, just a quick flash in my peripheral vision. A figure standing by the side of the road. At first, I thought it was just a shadow or maybe an animal, but as I got closer, I realized it was a person. A woman dressed in a tattered white dress, her long hair obscuring her face. She was standing completely still, facing the road. I slowed down, my curiosity getting the better of me. Who in their right mind would be out here at this hour? I rolled down my window slightly and called out, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" No response. She didn't even move. Unease settled in my stomach. Should I get out? But something told me to stay in the truck. I rolled up the window and decided to keep driving. As I pulled away, I couldn't help but glance in my side mirror. She was still there, standing in the same spot. But then, in the dim glow of my taillights, I saw her head slowly turn to follow me. I shook it off as a trick of the light and pressed on. About 20 minutes later, I saw her again. The same woman, in the same dress, standing by the side of the road. It was impossible. There was no way she could have gotten ahead of me. A chill ran down my spine. Was I losing my mind? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe there were 2 women, or maybe it was just some weird coincidence. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The next rest stop was only a few miles away, and I decided to pull in and take a break. Maybe a quick nap would clear my head. I parked my truck and headed into the rest area, but it was deserted. Not surprising given the hour, but still unsettling. I splashed some water on my face and headed back to my truck. As I approached, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Written in the dirt on the side of my truck, in large, uneven letters, were the words, "Hail PME." I looked around, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, but there was no one. I grabbed a rag from my cab and wiped the words away, telling myself it was just a prank. But as I climbed back into the truck, I saw her again, standing at the edge of the parking lot, watching me. My heart pounded in my chest. I locked the doors and started the engine, desperate to get away. As I drove back onto the highway, I kept checking my mirrors, but she was gone. The rest of the drive was a blur. I cranked up the radio, even though it was still just static, anything to fill the silence. When I finally reached my destination, the sun was rising, casting a faint glow over everything. I unloaded the cargo, eager to put the night behind me. As I climbed back into my cab, ready to head home, I noticed something on the passenger seat. It was a photograph, old and faded. In it was the woman in the white dress, smiling. And beside her was a truck, much like mine, with the same words scrawled on its side. Hail PME. He never figured out who she was or what she wanted. But I never took that route again, and I never drive through the night without thinking of her. If you ask me today what the creepiest thing I've ever experienced on the road is, I'll tell you this story. And believe me, once you've heard it, you'll understand why it still haunts me. My name is Jake, and I've been driving trucks for the past 15 years. I'm 38, living in a small town just outside of Dallas. Over the years, I've had my fair share of strange experiences on the road, but one night stands out above all others. It's the one that still makes me question everything I thought I knew about safety and trust. It was a quiet Thursday night, and I was hauling a load of furniture to Denver. The road was long, and after several hours of driving, I decided to pull into a rest stop for a quick break. You know how it is. Sometimes you just need to stretch your legs and clear your head. The rest stop was nearly empty. Just one other truck parked a few spaces down and a couple of cars. I parked my rig, locked the doors, and headed to the restroom. As I walked back, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Have you ever felt eyes on you when there shouldn't be? It was like that. A prickling on the back of my neck that made me turn around more than once. But I didn't see anyone. I got back to my truck, climbed in, and locked the doors again. I planned to take a short nap before hitting the road again. I must have drifted off quickly, because the next thing I remember is waking up to a strange noise. It was a soft, almost rhythmic tapping. I sat up and looked around, but nothing seemed out of place. Then I noticed my glove compartment was open. I knew I had closed it before I left the truck. My heart started to race. Had someone been in my truck? I checked my wallet, which I always kept in the center console, and sure enough, it was gone. My cash, my credit cards, everything gone. Panicking, I called 911. The dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way and to stay in my truck. I locked the doors again and waited, every shadow outside making me jump. When the cops arrived, I told them everything. They checked the area, but there were no signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. "Are you sure you locked the doors?" one of the officers asked. "Absolutely. I double-checked before I went to sleep," I replied, my frustration mounting. They took my statement and said they'd keep an eye out, but I could tell they didn't have much hope. It was like I was the only one who believed something truly strange had happened. After they left, I sat there, trying to piece it all together. How had someone gotten into my truck without breaking in? And why hadn't I woken up? I decided to check the surveillance cameras at the rest stop. Maybe they'd captured something. I walked over to the small office by the restrooms and asked the attendant if I could see the footage from the last few hours. He seemed hesitant, but eventually agreed. We watched the grainy footage together, fast-forwarding through the time I was parked. And then there it was. The camera showed me walking to the restroom, and then, a few minutes later, a dark figure approaching my truck. The figure seemed to pause at my door, and then nothing. It was as if the video had been cut. The next frame showed the figure walking away, holding something that looked like my wallet. Who could do that? I asked the attendant, my voice barely a whisper. He shrugged. "We've had a few break-ins before, but nothing like this." It's like they knew exactly where the cameras were and how to avoid being caught. I thanked him and walked back to my truck, feeling more unsettled than ever. As I sat in the cab, I couldn't help but replay the events in my mind. Who were these people? How did they get in and out without a trace? Weeks passed, and I never heard back from the police. My cards were canceled, and I got a new ID, but the sense of violation lingered. Every time I stopped at a rest stop, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, waiting for the right moment. To this day, I still don't know who robbed me that night or how they did it. It's a mystery that haunts me, a reminder that even the most routine stops can hide something sinister. And every time I tell this story, I see the same look of disbelief in people's eyes, the same question on their lips. Are you sure it happened? And all I can say is, I don't know who they were, but I'll never forget what they took from me, my peace of mind. I've been trucking for nearly 15 years now, and I've seen my share of strange things on the road. But there's one night that still haunts me, one stretch of Route 47 that I avoid like the plague. It was the night I began to doubt my own sanity. It was a late fall evening, and I was driving a long haul from Denver to Salt Lake City. I was running late, thanks to a massive traffic jam on I-80. My dispatcher was breathing down my neck, so when my GPS suggested a shortcut through Route 47, I didn't hesitate. I double-checked the map, and it seemed legit, cutting off a good 30 miles from my trip. How come I've never taken this route before? I wondered aloud. As I turned onto Route 47, a chill ran down my spine. The road was narrow and winding, flanked by dense woods. My headlights barely penetrated the darkness, and the moon was hidden behind thick clouds. The silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the hum of my engine. About an hour in, I noticed something odd. A figure on the side of the road, just standing there. I slowed down to get a better look. It was a man, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, like something out of the 1940s. His face was pale and gaunt, eyes hollow and staring straight at me. "What the hell?" I muttered. I rolled down the window and shouted, "You okay, buddy?" He didn't respond, just kept staring. I felt a shiver run through me. Against my better judgment, I pulled over and got out. "Do you need help?" I asked, stepping closer. Still no answer. His eyes followed me, unblinking. I took a step back, unnerved. Then, without a word, he pointed down the road. I turned to look, but there was nothing there. When I turned back, he was gone. I jumped back into my truck, heart pounding. Must be seeing things, I told myself. But as I continued down the road, the figure appeared again, and again, each time pointing further down the road. Is this some kind of sick joke? I asked myself. Am I losing it? Finally, I reached a small rundown gas station. Relieved to see another person, I pulled in and parked. The attendant, an old man with a weathered face, looked up from his newspaper. "Evening," he said, eyeing me curiously. "What brings you out here?" I told him about the man on the road, and his expression darkened. "You saw him, Pa?" he asked, almost whispering. "Saw who?" I demanded. "Who is he?" The old man sighed. "Local legend. They say a trucker died on this road back in '47. Lost control and crashed. Folks around here claim his spirit still haunts the road, trying to warn others." "Warn us about what?" I asked, my voice trembling. He pointed to a photo on the wall, a black and white picture of a mangled truck and a body covered with a sheet. "That curve up ahead. It's a death trap. Took him and a few others since." I felt a cold sweat break out. "So, what do I do?" "Stay here tonight," he advised. "Drive it in daylight. Too many don't make it in the dark." I took his advice, spending the night in my truck, though sleep eluded me. The next morning, I navigated the curve in daylight, my heart racing as I passed the spot where the phantom had pointed. I reached my destination safely, but I couldn't shake the feeling of those hollow eyes watching me. To this day, I avoid Route 47, and whenever someone asks if I've seen anything strange on the road, I tell them about the phantom trucker, hoping they'll heed the warning I almost ignored. Could it have been a hallucination? A trick of the mind? I ask myself sometimes, but deep down, I know the truth. Something, or someone, didn't want me to become another victim of Route 47.